Lou Lamoriello has finally addressed the media after a controversial trade deadline for the New York Islanders, and he's revealed shocking truths about the trades he did make and didn't make during this deadline. We're going to be talking about that on this episode of Islanders Digest and really breaking down how this is going to impact the Islanders' future moving forward, even beyond this season, because this is the most information Lou Lamoriello has really ever given the fans in a press conference. But before we get into that, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Be one of our first 100 subscribers. If you're an Islander fan and you want more Islanders content, this is the channel for you. And let's get right into this video. We have a lot of quotes from Lou Lamoriello. And before we get into that, I do want to summarize some of the things he said in this press conference, because for once, this was actually a really juicy press conference by Lou Lamoriello. We did not get the traditional, I believe in this group, and I think this group has everything it needs to win. He was honest, and he said this team needs changes. He also gave us some updates on what it was like talking to Nelson before he ended up trading him. He gave some updates on some of the Islanders' key injuries, including Hoberg, Varlamov, and Mathew Barzal. The update for Hoberg was pretty positive. It seems like he might be able to play in the next few days. Varlamov and Barzal, not so much. Varlamov is out for the season. Barzal, it does seem like he will be back, especially if the Islanders do make a playoff run, but Lou Lamoriello had made it very clear that he will not bring Barzal back until he is 100% healthy, and even though the timeline does say he should be able to resume skating in a few weeks, Lou Lamoriello made it very clear he is not going to rush Barzal, so if Barzal does return this season, that means he is 100% healthy, which at least that means they are not potentially risking injuring him further on, especially with the Islanders having him for several more years beyond this. You don't want Barzal to get hurt over a playoff push in a season where the Islanders really seem to be struggling. And then finally, he has made it really clear there will be changes this summer, and he does have plans to get younger. Now let's get right into some of these Lou Lamoriello quotes, because these are some of the juiciest quotes we've got from Lou Lamoriello in a long time. Typically, Lou Lamoriello's press conferences are a whole lot of nothing. Not this year, and it really shouldn't have been this year. I mean, Lou Lamoriello did make some big moves this season, and he made it really clear when talking about moves he made and didn't make. If we could have gotten younger and better, other than draft picks, we would have done it without question. And this quote is really interesting to me because a lot of people are upset that the Islanders did not trade Kyle Palmieri, and I really understand why Lou Lamoriello didn't. Draft picks don't really help the Islanders get younger, and for people who are complaining that the Islanders are too old, a draft pick, especially a second-round pick, if they do make the NHL, it'll be 3 or 4 years before they even make the roster, and really 5 or 6 years before they make a real impact on this team. If you want the Islanders to get younger, that you want them to get prospects. That prospects like Caleb Ritchie are going to help the Islanders right away. And I know other fans are a little upset that Lou Lamoriello really wanted to bring back Nelson, because as you see in this quote, Lou Lamoriello's intentions were to bring back Brock Nelson, according to Andrew Gross. And as you hear Lou Lamoriello talk, if you watch the full video, he makes it really clear that he really did want to keep Brock Nelson. He did what he could. He said he gave him a fair offer that he felt was fair for the player and the team. And he said you never really want a center like Brock Nelson to go if you can avoid it. And a lot of people are upset at that. They're saying that Lou Lamoriello should have been trading Brock Nelson no matter what. And you know what? I kind of disagree, at least a little bit. I do think for that return that the Islanders got, they had to trade Brock Nelson as an incredible return. It is going to help them long term, and it's really changed the way the Islanders are looking at the future now that they got such a bright young prospect. But at the same time, a center like Brock Nelson really is irreplaceable. If we look at the Islanders roster right now, the Islanders, who is going to be playing second line center next season? Who's going to be playing second line center this season? I know Pajot can hold the fort for now, and a lot of fans are also upset that the Islanders didn't trade Pajot, which really shocks me, because what was the plan? To place Casey Ciziquez as your second line center? Like, I understand that some fans kind of just want to tear the entire roster up and start over. Lou Lamoriello kind of made it really clear that these whole rebuilds, like tearing the whole roster apart and starting over, really don't work. And sure, you can say, look at Chicago, they just got the first overall pick after tearing the roster up, and you know what? They did get the first overall pick, and they're still terrible, even with Bedard playing well. And now you're starting to see bad habits develop in his game because they didn't have anybody for Bedard to play with. I think ideally Lou Lamoriello wants to bring Ritchie into a team that is competitive, and he has older players that he can learn from and really develop into a more complete player. And now some people are saying, oh, you could have just torn it up this season and built up in free agency. And we're going to really talk about that, because as we look at the players, these are the centers available in free agency. I don't really see any options for the Islanders that are better than Nelson. Granted, they could not agree on a deal, but if they had, I really think it was the right decision to bring back Brock Nelson. Now this list is ranked on the players making the most money. It's not necessarily a list of the players who are the best. There might be one or two guys missing from this list. Obviously, Nicklas Backstrom is no longer playing, but it is a kind of good look at how there's really not that many better options out there at second line center, especially in the short term. And if you're looking at the age of some of these players, John Tavares, first of all, probably not coming back to the Islanders. Second of all, is older than Brock Nelson. So if the whole plan is to get younger, this whole free agency idea that we can just pick up a different center in free agency doesn't really work that well for me. And you look at these other players, Claude Giroux, not better than Brock Nelson, especially for the Islanders. Yanni Gourde, definitely not better than Brock Nelson. Michael Granlund does show a lot of potential. But the other thing is, with a list like this that is so bare, and with the salary cap going up, you're going to have to pay an insane amount for one of these players. So I really don't think it was that crazy of an idea for Lou Lamoriello to try to get Brock Nelson back on a fair contract. Now, it didn't work out, but I understand the thought process behind it. And don't get me wrong, I love the return they got for Brock Nelson, but I can see the argument to why it kind of made sense to try to keep him. And at the end of the day, I really don't see this as a reason for fans to criticize Lou Lamoriello, because he did do the right thing. Whether he tried to sign Brock Nelson first before trading him, at the end of the day, he ended up trading him to the Colorado Avalanche. And not for nothing, it definitely helped the Islanders get a top prospect by showing the Avalanche that they had a lot of interest in keeping the player. If they're just trying to shop him to every last team, you definitely would have gotten a prospect as good as Richie. Now, we have some other quotes from Lou Lamoriello that I also really want to get into. This was definitely the best press conference he's given to us in a long time. Another quote where he said, we felt that where a few of our players are, when I say a few, several of our players we could have made moves with, they would be better done at a different time. And I definitely think this is an important thing to note. A lot of fans wanted to see the Islanders completely tear it down this season. They want to see the teardown right now. And realistically, I don't think that made sense for where the Islanders are right now. I mean, if you can look here, we do have several players the Islanders really did want, Islander fans at least, really want to move. Among names, Anders Lee, a lot of people want to trade Anders Lee. John Gabriel Pageau, they also want to move him. There's some other names thrown around like Hudson Fasching, Scott Mayfield, Pierre Engvall. I don't think any team at this point wants to take Pierre Engvall's contract, so trading him is really a fantasy at this point. But I think Lou Lamoriello is right where this trade deadline really was not the best place to trade some of these players, especially looking at where the Islanders are in the standings, especially if the Islanders wanted to get younger. Sure, I really believe that if the Islanders wanted to trade Pageau, they probably could have gotten at least a second-round pick for him. Now, some fans seem to think they would have gotten a lot more, and to that, it would have been harder to trade Pageau with one more year on his contract at $5 million. We did see other centers go. Scott Laughton got a lot of assets from the Maple Leafs, but keep in mind, the Maple Leafs are only paying him $1.5 million next season. I don't think the Islanders want to be holding on to salary, and because of that, I really don't think the Islanders would have gotten as much value for Pageau. On the other hand, if they do trade him next season, when the salary cap goes up, and they can really trade him on the draft or during the offseason, I definitely think the Islanders could be getting another return. But again, I don't think this makes sense unless the Islanders acquire another center, because it really doesn't make sense for Casey Cizikas to be playing second-line center. And I know some people can say, oh yeah, we can bring in Richie. Richie should not be playing second-line center on his first year as a prospect. I think the whole point of the moves Lou Lamoriello is trying to make is trying to bring in young players and also have veteran players to really mentor those players. And it doesn't make sense to bring in a younger player and just throw them into the lineup. That is not how you get the best results, and that's really not how you develop a player at all. And now, the one thing I will bring up is this season, the Islanders likely will not be having Matt Barzal, at least for the majority of the playoff push. Obviously, that doesn't mean anything for next season. Barzal will be healthy next season, so I guess you could say you could put Barzal in the second-line center. But again, it doesn't really make. Then if you do that, then you really don't have that much talent on the wing. And I know you can also say you can look at free agency in the wings. I do want to point out, if we look at the free agent options here, these are all the forwards. So this also includes some of the wings available here. If you look at this list, there really are not that many names that are that interesting, and a lot of the names are on the older side. So if the plan is to get younger, this whole option of, oh yeah, let's just trade away our players and get a bunch of free agents, it really doesn't make sense. I mean, Brock Boser is kind of interesting, but he does have a really rough injury history. Another player that has a lot of attention from me is Nikolai Ehlers, but a lot of teams are going to be interested in him. That doesn't mean to say the Islanders can't get him, but just this idea that you're going to trade all your players and then all the free agents are going to come back to your team is not realistic. And if you don't land those free agents, or if you trade your players and put yourself in a position where you have to sign free agents, and that's a situation where you're going to overpay. And in that situation, that's not ideal that's the exact type of situation we're trying to get the Islanders out of. So I definitely don't think it made sense just to trade players for the sake of trading players. And I do think what the Islanders will do is they will play their cards tight to their vest. They will be really smart. And if they can acquire free agents, then they can consider moving players like Pajot. But there's one more quote I really want to get into talking about what Lou Lamoriello said. I really like this quote as well, and it really encourages me about the future of the franchise. And it's like, he did say, there will be change this summer. Until there's change, you can't say how much, but I can assure you there will be change. Now, this might not seem like the biggest quote, but if you're an Islander fan, you know Lou Lamoriello never commits to changing this roster. Every year he says he's happy with the players. If he can, he'll add to it, but he loves this core. This year, he's really admitting not only that there should be change, but the team needs to get younger. And this is definitely really encouraging from Lou Lamoriello. I'm really excited for this offseason. I do think Lou Lamoriello made a lot of the right decisions. I don't think it made sense to really get a bunch of draft picks for this team, especially considering the Islanders do have 3 first-round picks in the next 2 seasons. They also have a second-round pick this year. They don't have a second-round pick next year, but it's not like the Islanders are in desperate need for more picks. What they need on their team right now is younger players that are getting closer to being NHL effective now and next season and the year after that. And you're not going to get that from a second-round pick that you probably would have gotten from Kyle Palmieri or Anders Lee or even Pajot. And you're definitely not going to get that from a pick that you pick now, because they're not going to be ready for another 3 or 4 years. So I definitely think I like the direction that Lou Lamoriello is taking, and I think it's really encouraging that he's really came out in this press conference and said there's going to be change on this Islanders roster. That being said, let me know what you think. Were you satisfied with what Lou Lamoriello said, or are you disappointed with what happened this deadline? I'd love to know what your thoughts are in the comments below, so be sure to leave them. And as always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and let's go Islanders.